Welcome everyone to week 2 of our 3-week course on site administration. My name is Jocelyn and I'm the Manager of Adoption and Education for our Australian team. The purpose of this webinar is to complement the course rather than replace it, so we will be focusing on highlighting some key areas and doing some quick demos. This week we're going to look at 2 topics. One is adding functionality through appearance using themes and blocks, and then we'll look at activities and resources. So last week we learned about the basics of site administration and the site admin tree, managing courses, users and cohorts, and in the webinar we did a demo of some of the key features there. The recording for all of our webinars are on the course and just in the webinar recordings playlist. So you can go back through and watch that at any time you would like to. For week 2's content, we are going to be looking at these couple of things. So adding functionality through appearance. There's a book that goes through themes and then some additional information about adding blocks. And I will jump over to my training site so that we can have a look at some of those in a bit more detail. So depending on your access as a site admin, when you go into the site administration menu, you may see that the tabs across the top look a little bit different to what I have. So I'm a full site admin. Now, if we want to go and have a look at our themes and do some work with our themes, we want to hit the appearance menu. And then under this theme section, you will see what themes that you have available on your site. So by default, the site will have Boost and Classic, and then we also have some additional ones like the Fordson theme, theme Lambda, and then down the bottom we also have Snap. Now the theme selector is where we go to select which theme we want to use, and we can set a different one that's by default. We can select legacy, mobile and tablet. So historically these were really important back in the days when mobile devices were relatively new. It was always a good idea to choose a really responsive theme, but these days the themes that are provided with Moodle are all responsive to mobile devices, so it's not so much of an issue anymore. So we just tend to go with setting a default theme. If I want to edit any of the default themes that the site is using, then I would come into the name of the theme. So in this case, Boost, we'll just select Boost. And this will allow us to do things like add theme presets, files, background images. We can also set the brand color in here. And then at the top in the advanced settings, there is also the option to add some CSS, which can just help to extend some of the functionality, maybe add some colors in some different places that aren't available just through the general settings. This can require a lot of maintenance, particularly when it comes time to upgrade, just to make sure that all of those CSS changes still look correct with the updated code. If you are one of our clients and would like to make some CSS changes, I'd suggest getting in touch with your account manager to see how we might be able to help you with that. Now, blocks are another great way to edit the appearance and functionality of a site. You can add blocks that sit just on a course, or they can sit maybe on your dashboard, or they could even show on every single page across the site. Now, some common ways that blocks are used are through adding images or text advertising sponsors and upcoming events throughout the site, or even like on the dashboard page, maybe adding a completion block so that students can see their activities and their progress through their courses as well. As an example, if we go into our site home, there are some blocks here, like we have the calendar, which shows upcoming events and also when assignments and things like that are due. We have configurable reports for our admins, so they can click on one of those and get the updated report information. Now, if we want to add a new block, what we do is we click on the cog at the top right. We want to turn editing on. And then once we have done that, over on the left-hand side in this theme, and it can be a little bit different throughout all of the different themes, In this boost one in particular, add a block appears on the bottom left-hand side, so we will click that. We're going to add the HTML block for this example. Now, if you're using a 4.0 or a 4.1 site, it will no longer be called the HTML block. It will be called the text block, which is a little bit more representative of what it actually does. So if we click on HTML, by default, they all get pushed right down to the bottom of the page. And we have the option using the crosshairs. We can move it up the page if we want to do that. And there are also some settings within the block that we can change as well. So if I want to change this so it's not showing new HTML block, I just click on the settings and click configure new HTML block. So we will give it a title. And then in the content, we can do a whole range of things from just adding our normal text. We can add links in here. We can add images, video files, H5P activities if we really want to do that. What we will do here is just add a link in. So I'm just going to grab the link from our Academy site and just link the word Academy and create link. Okay, now when we come down to look at some of the settings, we have this option called where this block appears. So it will tell you the original block location, which is the front page, also known as our site home. The page context. So this is where we can tell it where we want it to display throughout the site. So if we only want it on the front page or the site home, we can do that. We also have the option to display it on the front page and any pages that are added to the front page as well. And then here's the option where we can display this through the entire site. So if there was a message that we wanted everyone to see, no matter what page they were on within the site, this is the option that we would select. Now, this is something that we can only do when we're adding blocks to the site home. What we can do from there is set a default region for it. So we are going to set the right-hand side. This is typically you're going to find where all of the blocks will live is on the right-hand side. And the default weight is -4. Now, if you go to -10, this means that it's going to promote it at the top of every single page, regardless of what other blocks are already there. And you can also set specific location for this page. So on each page that it appears on, you can go ahead and change, well, by default, yes, I might want it at the very top of the page for the site home, but maybe on other pages, you might not want it to be quite as prominent. So you do have the option to change that here, as well as change things like the region if that's an available option. So we will click Save Changes. And so now we have that block sitting here on the site home. And if I was to go to Dashboard, we can see that that block is there as well. And if I click on a course, again, that block that we just created is sitting there too. Okay, so the other things that we're going to have a look at this week are some of the more popular activities and resources in Moodle, and most of those will be covered in the Moodle staples. So things like the labels, books, lessons, quizzes, assignments, and we're also going to look at some of the advanced uses of assignments, forums, and some advanced grading methods and things like that as well. So there is a lot of content to cover this week, but in our demo, we're just going to hit one of like the really key kind of common things that are used. Otherwise, we would literally be here all week. So what we will have a look at is our label. Now, a label is a really diverse resource. So when we go into a course, now in this case, we already have editing turned on. So I will turn that off just so we get the full experience. So come into our course, it looks nice. We click on the cog on the top right-hand side. And then, note, we have a button on this page. Depending on the theme, it can look a little bit different as to what you see, whether or not you have to go into it through a cog or if you have a nice button. Buttons are very easy. So we will turn it on. And then we have a whole lot of extra sort of things that are happening on this page. We have the option to drag and move content if we want to. In terms of adding a resource like a label, what we see on the right-hand side are all of these options to add an activity or resource, so we can add it directly into the section where we want it to live. I'm just going to add it to this top section here and select add an activity or resource. Now our label, we can see it's here in our start option. It also lives in our resources section as well because we're providing information to the users. So I'll go ahead and click on label. So we're then taken to another screen where we can add any of our label text. But this text box is also pretty similar to what we saw to the block. And allows us to add not just text, but images, URLs, videos, all sorts of different kinds of things in there. So if we wanted to have text and an image, so maybe we could say, check out our upcoming client sessions. We will add that in as a link. So this is a link to everything that we have upcoming in the Asia Pacific region. So I will create a link there. And what I might also do is upload a file. So we have a nice looking image that goes with that. So I will browse our repository. We'll want to upload a file and I will just choose that. And what do we want to save that as? Open LMS logo and then upload this file. Now what we get here are a couple of different options when we're uploading images. This always comes up, and always a good idea to describe this image for someone who cannot see it. So those people who are using screen readers, for example, we want to make sure that they're getting the best possible experience with us. So we will just say image of the Open LMS logo. If the image is decorative only, we can flag it as that as well. And then we have options to specify the size. You can allow Moodle to auto size it, which I always find really handy. And then it resizes based on what kind of device you're using, if it's a desktop or a mobile device and things like that. And then where we want to align it. So I'm just going to click middle and save image. Now, once we've done all of that and we've put everything in there that we want to, there are a whole heap of other settings that I'm going to run through. And what you'll notice as you go to start creating activities and resources is that these are really quite common across everything that Moodle does, which is nice. It means that we don't have to go and learn how to do everything differently. There's a lot of consistency. So common module settings. So this really defines whether you want the activity or resource to show on the course page like it has here, whether you want to hide it from the students and maybe make it available at another time at your choosing. So you would have to come back into this and then make it show on course page. Or you can make it available but not shown on the course page. And this kind of makes it a little bit like an orphan. So you need to remember the link and keep the link handy and then somehow provide that direct link to the resource or activity. Generally, I would just stick with show on a course page. And if we did want to add some kind of restrictions to users being able to see this, rather than using the hide from students, I would come down into restrict access. Because what this means is we can specify some criteria that must be satisfied before users can view the resource or activity. So if we click on add restriction, we could do things like restrict it based on them having completed a previous activity. So that this was a certificate, for example, you might base on them having completed the course quiz, and if they pass that, then they get access to their certificate. You could base it on a date. So if you notice in all of our academy courses, all of the content is available from a certain date, and we've used restrict access to manage all of this. So it's the same sort of thing. You can do this for all of the activities and resources and also for topic sections as well. You can do it based on grades, groups, groupings, and then a restriction set is like a collection of restrictions that you want to place on it as well. I'm just going to leave that open for this example. And then under activity completion, so this is essentially what tells Moodle a student has done what they need to in order for it to be considered complete. These ones are going to be a little bit different depending on the resource or activity and what it allows the student to do in terms of interactions. What you'll find though is that there's always going to be these two options. So there's always the option to not indicate activity completion. So if this is just, general information, we don't need to make sure that they've read it, then we don't need to indicate activity completion. Otherwise, we can specify that students can manually mark the activity as completed. The other options that you'll come across that are pretty common are, based on a particular condition. And then we can specify, so if it's a quiz, they must have received a grade. If it's a feedback or an assignment submission, something like that, then maybe they have to have actually made a submission. So there's all sorts of things that you can do to track whether or not a student has actually completed a resource or activity. Then there's also the option to add tags. So this can be a really great way to link bits of content together, not just a course overall, but also within a course and with particular resources and activities that you add. Many of them can accept tags. And then, maybe add a block that has a tag cloud, and then people can click on the tag cloud or a word in the tag cloud and see related content. So it can be a really powerful tool to use. And then lastly, you can specify what happens with course competencies, if there are any that are set up within a course. So you can specify things whether or not it does nothing when the activity is completed, and the completion is based on the activity completion up here. Whether you want to attach evidence to the competency or actually send that evidence to review or complete that competency. Now, competencies are something that we will touch on in a little bit more detail next week. So I am going to save and return to course. And we can see, because we have added a massive logo and we didn't resize it, Moodle's just gone, okay, we're going to make that as wide as it will possibly fit on the screen because we've uploaded a really big file. And then we have our link there to all of our client sessions as well. So just a little something to keep in mind if you are uploading a really massive logo like we've just done, then maybe you do want to take advantage of specifying a size for it. Now, the last thing that I wanted to show today was how to update the activity chooser. So the activity chooser is when we come into a course and we select the add an activity or resource. You can see here we have some options. We can star, we have all activities, resources, and recommended. And as an admin, we have some control over what we can do and what users can see in terms of those tabs, and particularly the recommended tab as well. So if we go into our site administration menu and then into the courses tab, we have a section here called activity chooser. So if we go into the activity chooser settings, this first one here, so this one, activity chooser tabs, so that relates to the tabs that we see across the top when we're looking at the activities. And so at the moment we have selected starred, all activities, resources, and recommended. We also have the option to remove activities and resources and just have starred, all, recommended, or we can remove the all and have another option as well. So this just kind of depends on how many different ways you want users to be able to see all of those activities and resources in a particular context. And then there can also be a footer as well. So if we go back one step, that recommended activities tab, we have to specify what we want to put in there as well. So if we have a look here and we're looking at recommended activities and we want to say, we want to recommend that people maybe start using H5P and perhaps the lesson activities, we can just select them there. Now, once they are selected, if we go back into one of our courses and go again to our activity or resource, we can now see that under the recommended tab, we now have H5P and lessons specified as the recommended activities. So that's really everything that I wanted to go through for this week. Are there any questions? No. Okay. So next week is our final week in the course, and we'll take a look at some of the grade book and competencies as well. Sorry, the section competence grade book, and then our competencies as well. There will be a short section on reporting troubleshooting tips and some tricks and things like that. And then we will wrap up the course. So that is all from us today. I will switch off the recording and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.